Okay, let's walk through some of these examples that we talked about earlier. So there was the example of the garage. So let's go revisit that example. So we have a garage here, and inside of the garage, there's that light, right? And we know that the light bulb itself will turn on certain events. So what are the triggers that could turn on this automated light? Well, it could be a timer. So potentially we set this up through a security system, and that again goes on through 8 to 8. Another one could be the garage door, right? So the garage door itself opens, and that's a trigger. Another example that we could do is maybe a security system, right? There's an alarm that gets triggered, and automatically all the lights in the house get triggered. So these are all events that trigger a function. In this case, the function is just a light, but it's the same concept with AWS. So if we go to AWS here and we go to Lambda, we can think of the same concepts. So in this case, we have a function that's sitting here doing something. It's kind of just hanging out like the light. And we have to figure out what are the events that could go ahead and trigger that. So one of the events could be, again, a timer. And in the case of AWS, they call the timer CloudWatch. So we'll just initialize that as CW. There's also the API, right? The API gateway, and that would be a web service. And there's a screencast that goes over that you can take a look at. And then finally, there could be maybe something like S3. So an S3 trigger, you put a file inside, and then it goes through and it triggers that function. So much like the light that's motion controlled in your garage, there's many ways to trigger it. In AWS Lambda functions, the same thing. There's many different ways to trigger it. And you can set up a timer, you can set up an API gateway, you can set up an S3 function, you can set up many other methods as well. And that's a good analogy to think about. And I think that'll be helpful going forward.